If the system can make money off me and my people, I'm going to make money off the system and don't have to support it the same way.
And we are back. Welcome to Commerce and Chill. I'm Jessica Johnson Cope.
I'm Waleed.
Hi, Waleed.
Hey, Jess, how's it going?
I'm fine. How's you doing?
Things are great.
Great. Well, welcome. If this is your first time visiting Commerce and Chill Land, we are entrepreneurs who own two businesses together. We also happen to be married. And so Commerce and Chill is the intersection of small business, entrepreneurship, love, and life. So thanks for stopping by. We're glad you're here and hope you get something out of today's episode. So, Cope.
Johnson.
I don't know if you heard, but recently the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Why are you laughing?
Because it's the way you said it in your face. You was like, I don't know if you heard. The Academy of Motion Pictures and Science.
The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. You know, the people who put out the Oscar Awards.
Yup.
They made a big announcement. Beginning in 2022, films aiming for the top award at the Oscars will have to turn in a confidential inclusion standard form. Starting in 2024, Best Picture nominees must feature women, people of color, LGBTQ plus people, or people with disabilities in prominent roles in front of the camera or behind the camera to be eligible. The Academy created 4 categories that will gauge the level of diversity in a film's cast: production crew, marketing and distribution team, and in the opportunities it provides young filmmakers and executives. To qualify for Best Picture, a film must satisfy 2 of the categories. What do you think about that?
First of all, why are we waiting to 2024?
Because you got to give them some time to catch up. You know, a lot of the films that will be considered before 2024 might already be in a can that is already completed. And so they don't have the time necessarily. I'm not making excuses, just trying to.
And you know how I feel about excuses.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about excuses.
Excuses are for losers. Winners don't make excuses.
Winners just win. But this is giving them time to incorporate these elements into their films if the films don't already have it. So it would kind of be unfair to judge films that didn't have notice of this criteria prior to doing their post-production, prior to wrapping, prior to putting a movie out. So that's giving the money teams, the film teams, time to get everything in order. What do you think?
I just don't get it. 2024, 2022. I'm like, if you say you're going to do something or this is what we're going to do it immediately. Like, I don't understand why. I don't understand. I just don't understand it. People talk about they want to fix stuff or they want to make things. Action and speed gets things done, right? To me, it's about movement. We could talk, and then you put these dates on it. Yeah, putting a date on it gives it some form of concreteness. Like, is that even a word?
Yes.
But it makes it solidifies it. But I'm like, just do it. Like, why hesitate?
Well,
why
part of this is the aftermath of the hashtag Oscars So White a few years ago, that the films that are represented in the Oscars don't necessarily reflect the audience across this country, at least.
It's been like that forever.
It has, and it's unfortunate because, well, you know, as Black people, when we look at the Oscars, we often don't see ourselves represented in front of the camera or behind the camera. And having a team of production-minded filmmakers, photographers, and creatives, you know, this is something that when we discussed it as a team, it really resonated with them. So shout out to our content team for being woke about what's going on in the film industry, because it's not, you know what they say, it's not show, what is it? It's not show fun, it's show business. And so frequently we forget about the business aspect and how diversity, inclusion, and equity. Someone reminded me the other day at my anti-racist task force meeting that we can't forget the equity, that Diversity, inclusion, and equity is important regardless of what your business is. As a Black man who runs a business in New York City, what do you think when you see people who are lauded for being the first in anything that's business related? Because if we think about the movies,
you mean first based on their color or their culture?
First based on Black or whatever. That you think about Hattie McDaniel.
I present the Academy Award for the best performance of an actress in supporting roles during 1939 to Hattie McDaniel.
McDaniel was the first Black to win.
Yeah. Gone with the win.
An Academy. Yes, to win an Oscar for.
To me, I'm conflicted because it's just like anything with politics. People are like, oh, Obama's the first African American president.
Don't say what you're going to say.
I wasn't.
Okay.
Or, this now with the race that's going on now today, currently with Biden and Kamala Harris. It's just, to me, it's great that they did it. They became the first one. But then the other part of it is, I'm like, why it take so long? Why should they have to be, I'm the first person of color to do this? I get it and respect that they broke that barrier and they did it. But my whole thing is why? Why does someone have to be the first? Why is it not? There's no one saying so and so is the first Caucasian president or so and so is. It's like he's the president. I get it. There's some excitement there, and you're like, finally it's happened. But the other side of me is just why? Why is this person the first?
Because there's systemic racism.
Right.
Number one.
I get that. I'm not. When I say why, I'm being facetious. I'm just like, why? Why did it take so long? Right? I can't even think of any particular thing at the moment. But you're talking about the president or this Kamala Harris potentially being the first woman vice president, and then
the first woman of color, the first Black woman, and the first Asian woman.
Right. So to me, it's just like, why do these things take so long? And I'm saying why because I'm being facetious because we know why it happens. But for me, it shouldn't be happening. It's simple. You live in a country where if you read the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights and all this stuff, and it says all men are created equal, that's a whole nother story because it just says men, it doesn't say women, and then the people who were in the room who wrote it and blah, 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 blah. But it says all these things, but people tend to cherry pick from it when it comes to certain things and certain people. Mm-hmm. Yes, am I happy someone becomes the first this and they're a person of color? Yeah, I'm happy. But at the same time, I'm just like, what? WTF? Why? It should be a norm. And that's where we get all how many times when you were younger that you could think of in our communities where it's so celebrated when someone graduates from high school or college, or you see someone, a Black male or a person of color with their child, and they're like, oh, look, he's a good daddy. What I'm supposed to do that. To me, my parents was like, oh, we're going to throw you a graduation party. And I'm like, why? I'm supposed to graduate. You don't have to throw me a party for graduating from school.
But the party isn't for you.
Who's the party for?
The party is for your parents, so that they can share.
So they get turned up?
Let's get it crunk up on that fun up in this dance.
No.
You got a degree.
No, so that they can share the celebration with their community, because oftentimes when it comes to graduation and some of those key moments, there's a limited number of tickets, there's a limited capacity as to who can participate, and so the graduation party, it's really not about you, it's about the community coming together to celebrate.
I get that, but my thing is, why are we celebrating something that should be done?
Because it doesn't
celebrate people?
Because it doesn't happen enough.
Exactly, and that's my point. Do we celebrate people going to work every day in our community? No, because it's a given. You get your up, you go to work, you put food on the table and build something for you, your family, and those that depend and rely on you. I'm not saying we shouldn't be happy because someone meets that milestone, but I'm like I was a public school teacher for a minute. There would be a stepping up ceremony because they didn't want to call it graduation after a while. They changed it to a stepping up from pre-K to kindergarten. Then there was another ceremony when they go from kindergarten to first grade. And then from middle school, elementary school to junior high school. Then from junior high school to high school. And then high school to college. What? stepping up. I'm stepped out.
Well, you take it for granted because
I'm not taking it for
because you've had the opportunity to celebrate a lot of things. There's some
I didn't
people,
celebrate them all. I just did them.
but there's some people who don't.
I get it, but I'm
And
saying
so
why do
the
we
transition
not
from
make that the
PK to
norm?
K to kindergarten, the transition from kindergarten to first grade, you have to celebrate the small wins.
The kid is going from pre-K to kindergarten. What do they do in pre-K? Blue, red, yellow, 1, 2, 3. Yay! Give me a cap. I'm going to kindergarten. I'm not saying you shouldn't be celebrate the small wins. I'm saying
Exactly what it sounds like you're saying.
no. Here's my point. You don't celebrate people going to work every day, right?
Right.
You don't celebrate people. You don't celebrate every time you ride the subway to go wherever. There are some things that you.
I'm sure if you had a
Do you celebrate somebody taking a shower every day or brushing their teeth in
there's
your
some
house?
people that we
No,
might need to.
there's some people. Yes,
we might need to
we should celebrate that to encourage them to do it more. I
Yes.
totally agree with that.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But I'm saying, do you celebrate taking a shower every day? Do you celebrate brushing your teeth? There are some things you do because you're supposed to do it, and I'm saying these things need to be normalized. Where it's like, oh, there's someone who's a person of color who did this, and you'd be like, okay, like that's a given.
So then what should be celebrated if you're black? What is it honorable to celebrate? Because if I hear what you're saying, it's almost like, well, all of these things are everyday commonplace occurrences.
We always celebrate, right? Wasn't we going somewhere and whatever, and like, yo, we soulful, right? We were driving and somebody was out in the street doing their job, and they was just dancing with some headphones on while they was directing. I don't know, they was directing traffic construction. Like, we some
But that's not celebrating. That's just that person having a good time doing what they do.
We some celebrating people, and I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate, but I believe there's a time for celebration and there's a time for doing. And we're at the time in our point where we need to put our heads down and do a lot and then celebrate later. Sometimes you got to sacrifice something now so you can have a lot later on. Put our heads down and let's get the work done and let's own the system.
Okay, so I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to press the pause button because
it's like saying but go ahead.
no, it's not. I'm about to break it down.
Press the pause button. Here we
I'm
go.
gonna
We
press
need
the
a sound
pause
effect for the
button.
pause button.
Because there are a lot of things that people do that other people in underrepresented communities aren't always aware of. And
Okay.
because the general market doesn't tell our stories, they don't tell our successes, they don't give us reason to celebrate.
Rewind back to the episode.
Hold on.
We should be telling our own stories. We should not be letting anybody dictate what goes. Like, I don't get the chance to tell nobody else's story in any other culture or race. I can't get up and be like, oh, and this, blah, blah, blah. But they get to tell our story. Why? Because we allowed them to.
I don't disagree.
Because we celebrating.
However, how are the people on Walton Avenue gonna know about like Reginald Lewis and his great acquisition with Beatrice Foods if we don't talk about it?
And we are talking about it right now on Commerce and Chill.
How are people gonna know about Jeremiah Hamilton?
Well, wait a minute.
That he was a stockbroker shortly after the Civil War, and he was known to be the first black
Dropping facts
millionaire. And at the time of his passing in 1875, he had amassed a wealth of over $2 million. If we don't talk about that, then
Because we're
little
not
Jimmy on the
because
corner
we're not owning,
won't think that it's a possibility to be a millionaire.
because we're not owning the platforms to tell those stories. Explain this. How did we cause Popeyes to sell out of chicken sandwiches? But we can't make the local business of color sell out every week. Explain that to me. We can have Popeyes and Chick-fil-A selling hella chicken, but we can't go down the block to, I don't know, Mr. Moe's Tavern or, Jack's Burger Shack or the little new restaurant.
Marcus Samuelson's
The Red Rooster, or go down the street
Shout
on
out to
Saratoga
Marcus.
Avenue in Bed-Stuy to McDonough Cafe, or around the corner to Butch and Coco, or to go to Noel New York Salon. How come we can't book them out? How come we can't sell them where they're inside running around with their hair coming out and they're like, we are the food? How come we can't do that? But we could get Popeyes, which is a national I think they're internet. I think they're in other countries now. But they have stores all over the United States, North America, and wherever else, and they sell out of chicken. Explain that to me. How do we do that? But in our communities, we're not selling out our businesses. And when I say sell out, we're not causing them to sell out all their inventory every day, every week. Like, how is that? Because you can come to the soapbox. I ain't running out of water. I will wash all them dirty things. Like, we ain't running out. But explain to me, how come we can't do that? We could sell out chicken sandwiches. We could cause Popeyes to run out of chicken. Run out of chicken sandwiches, but we can't. Let me rephrase that. We can't have our businesses in the community.
No, not we can't. We don't.
We don't. Why don't we? Explain that to me.
My first theory is that in many underrepresented communities, the idea of business ownership is played down so much so that people think of business owners in a negative light. You think of a hustler, right? Because that's the person. I'm gonna need you to put your fingers down.
Sorry.
Where they are. That's the person that's always working. But when you use the term hustle, it's normally attributed to
Drugs.
a seedy type of industry.
Right, something illegal.
Drugs, numbers.
When we grew up, if you said somebody was hustling, you was like, oh, that was a negative connotation.
That means that you couldn't tell your mother you were friends with them.
Right. That was the thing. You go in the house and be like, oh, what does Bobby do? Oh, Bobby's a hustler. What? Like now you say, oh, I'm hustling. Now it's looked at totally different because entrepreneurship is looked at totally different now than it was then.
Yeah.
Because now it's cool to be an entrepreneur.
Not necessarily.
That's where on social.
That's what people post, but that's
Right.
not what people are living.
Because they're not real. Like that's another. Whatever. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
So part of it is because many people don't see business ownership modeled where they live. So if you don't know
Some of them see it, but they just don't respect it.
or they don't realize what it is.
Because the beauty salon at the corner, it ain't sexy enough. Because on Instagram, they looking at who's building the next app or who's building the next tech thing. Like, you should do your research on that. Like, no disrespect to them. How many of them are really making money? Let's talk about that. I've said it a million times. It's
If
easy
you
to...
said it a million times, then why you
I'm
say
going
it
to say it
again?
1,000,001. It's easy to start a business. It's hard to make a profit in business, right? Go look up how many businesses are generating a profit. And a lot of them are the small businesses in your community versus the big ones that are celebrated. What is that company that makes the electric trucks that competes with Tesla? What is it?
Nikola.
Nikola? Didn't they just have this big thing where they were like, they lied about everything and they don't even have a truck. Everything was just like some drawings and stuff.
Let that be a black business.
Right. Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. If that was a business of color, it would have been game over. They still in business. People giving them money. Oh yeah, let me invest in. They lied. What about Thanos? The young lady who was supposed to be the next Steve
Is it
Jobs.
Thanos or
Not Thanos. Thanos is from Marvel.
Theros?
Theranos, right? She was over everything. They had her on magazine covers. She was dressing in all black, and it was like, she's the next Steve Jobs. Damn, everything was a lie.
You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie.
You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie. It was all a lie. But she was promoted, and she let that have been a little brown girl. She just going to trial now, and that happened, 3-4 years ago? Come on. So you were saying?
So because business ownership, black business ownership, Latino business ownership isn't always recognized in our communities,
Even
if it's there. I mean, we'll be quick to go to the bodega.
It's a business.
It's a business, but in many of our neighborhoods,
They don't respect it.
the bodegas are owned by Yemeni people from
So
Yemen.
it's really not a bodega anymore.
What is it?
Because the bodega isn't, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, bodega is a Spanish word.
It's a Spanish word, right? So
But it
now
can still be a bodega, but it's just Yemeni owned.
But typically, when we grew up, when you was like, it's a bodega, it was because
You thought it was Spanish, though.
9 out of 10 times, a person
someone
behind the
Latino.
counter was a Latino or Latina, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
So
Latinx.
there you go. So the thing is, unfortunately for us as people who are of color and business color, you're held to a different standard than anyone else. How many times have you seen something go wrong in a business of color, and the first thing someone says is, oh, that's why you can't shop at a black business or you can't go to a black business.
I'm not gonna lie, it happens here. We have people come in sometimes and they're like, oh, they messed up my check. That's why you can't work for no black businesses. But they never tell you that their check was messed up because they didn't go to work.
Even that.
They didn't go to work,
Or
and
they
the
didn't sign
black
a time-
business
they didn't sign a
gave them a
time sheet,
job
or they didn't punch in
when
and punch out.
nobody else would give them a job.
But do they say that anywhere else?
No,
If
they
somebody-
just feel like they have the freedom
I don't know,
to
like
say whatever.
I don't know who owns J. Crew or who owns Lord and Taylor or who owns like some of these businesses. You go there, people go there and have a bad experience. You don't hear them say, "That's why you can't shop at a Caucasian-owned business." I've never heard that in my entire life. But as soon as you go to a business of color, that's the first thing you hear. That's why you can't. Why is it because something goes wrong and the person happens to be of color? That's why you can't go there. I like. Can anybody explain that to me? Because I will never understand that. And the fact that our own people buy into that psychological thing and use it and repeat it over and over, you're conditioning yourself to say, and the people around you, don't shop at a business of color. Because when something goes wrong, it's not because they're not a good business person. It's not because they don't know how to do financials. It's not because they're not a good operator. You're saying it's because they're of a certain color. What sense does that make? So if that's your mentality, that means people of certain colors shouldn't do certain tasks or jobs, right? People who are green shouldn't fly airplanes. People who are purple shouldn't drive cars. Like, what does that? That's why you can't shop at a business of color. That's why you can't go to a black business. That makes no ever-loving sense, people. Really think about that. Like, go look in the mirror and say that to yourself, and just really think about what you're saying. Not saying all of you have said it, but when you hear somebody say it, think about it. The reason this business is doing bad is because they're of color.
And they also never count the
What?
cost of how many strikes people of color have against them, even in starting and operating a business.
That's ludicrous.
Oh, the people there are terrible. The employees there are terrible. Why don't they get the building fixed? Why don't they? I've heard some of this from, going to different restaurants and different hair
No,
salons.
the employees being bad, I can't argue that one. But
But
that can
sometimes-
happen. That can
sometimes
happen in
it's a-
any business.
It's a factor of access to resources, and we don't always
Who
necessarily.
owns Chipotle? Because I've been
It's publicly traded.
I've been to a couple. I've been to a couple of Chipotle,
It's publicly traded.
and it sucked.
Did you write the board?
No,
Write the board. Fill out the survey.
but
when you
like
get your food.
who founded it?
Some guys out of Colorado?
Right. I don't think they were POC.
No, they weren't.
Right. But you don't. You just go there and be like, Chipotle is no good. You don't say because they are of this group or of this culture or this race that business. That's not why that business is
you
good.
know what
I get a bad burrito at Chipotle. I'm not. It's because what the person looks like. It's because the person behind the counter made me a whack burrito. That's why it's whack. It's got nothing to do with who they are and what they look like. Sorry.
So I'm big on solutions and not so big on what the problem is. So what's the solution? How do we address this? I'm thinking back to the day when we were younger.
You need to have more businesses in your community.
Well, think about this.
You need to own more business, and you need to support more businesses. I challenge you to go out your business, and I challenge you to go to your local businesses of color and cause them to sell out of all their stuff. And don't give me that, oh, Waleed, every time I go to the place around my way, they run out of inventory, so they never have enough anyway. So there's no need for us to even do that. Yeah, that might be a fact. But the question is, you need to dig down and deeper and find out why they run out. Because maybe you don't go to them enough, so they only order a limited amount of inventory because they can't afford for the food to go bad and have spoilage. That cost. Sorry.
I
Solutions.
say first it starts with positive images. Remember back in the day when Budweiser used to have the poster series, Kings and Queens of Africa?
Yes, I do remember that. Shaka Zulu and all of them, they had the different nations or the different tribes.
And
I do
then
remember
McDonald's would have the Black History Month 365 Black.
that. Yeah, I remember that.
And they used to profile positive images
dating
of
myself.
people. That's okay. We as Black business owners, we can promote our own positive images. So the really large
Commerce and
companies,
chill.
you can, look back at what Budweiser did. Look back at what McDonald's
Why
did,
they don't
and
do
how
it
could you
anymore?
do it?
I'm just throwing it out there. Like, think about that. Like, why don't they do that anymore? And then what caused them to do it? Like, we need to really think about when this stuff happens on these different levels. Like, how many places you hear now, they're like, oh, we're putting... I saw some things in LinkedIn, all this. So-and-so is the first woman of color on the board of directors for whatever firm. And I'm just like, and? Like, why is she the first?
Because we haven't held that firm accountable.
Like, first of all, I don't need to hold anybody accountable. You know why?
You own stock.
No, I just
You
don't.
hold the stock owner. You
No,
hold the
I
the
don't
board
buy
of
their
the-
product.
You hold the board of
I
director
don't. I
accountable.
don't buy their product.
I challenge you to look at all of the companies you own stock in and see what their board representation looks like. Do they have an adequate number
They
of
all
women?
don't. They
Do
don't.
they have an adequate number of
No, they don't.
Latinos? Do they have an
Because,
adequate number
but
of blacks?
my method for buying stock and making money is not the average person's method for buying
But
stock.
still, it doesn't matter if you own a share and interest
I
in
have
that
a-
business.
oh, yeah, you have-
and
you
you
have-
sit here complaining. You could pick up your pen. You can send an email.
No,
you
I'm
can
not-
hold those people accountable.
I'm not complaining. Because I'm going to be on the record. There are some businesses I own stock in that I don't buy their stuff.
You sound like you're contradicting yourself.
I am a contradiction. I think that's what the C in COPE stands for, contradiction. That's the theme for my social platform the next couple of weeks, contradiction. And here's it. If the system can make money off me and my people, I'm going to make money off the system and don't have to support it the same way. I can make money off of a business who is a publicly traded stock and not buy any of their products, but I could buy their stock and still make money off them because whatever's going on in the stock market with their stock going up or down.
So what's Carl Icahn often called? What's it? Renegade investor? No, he's a. What's it
I
when
don't
you
know the
when
term they
you
use.
you
But
have
you
what's
think-
it called?
Think about
Tell
that
me what that's
philosophy for a
called.
minute there. Think about that. Like people are looking around confused now.
No, people are not looking around confused. They're
I
trying
can
to
own-
understand why you won't use your power to do more.
I'm not saying don't use that power to do
you.
more.
I'm talking about you.
I'm not
You see
saying
for
me,
contradiction.
right? I own some shares in whatchamacallit. I can go to the shareholders meeting.
Yes.
I could attend the calls, and
Yes.
I do attend the calls, and I listen to see what they're gonna say. So I decide whether I'm gonna buy more or I'm gonna sell and make money.
You
But at
still have
same
the
time-
opportunity to ask the questions. Who's on your board? Why don't you
100%.
Who's the first black person on your board?
And I'm not saying we shouldn't
Why do you
that.
not have a black
But,
person on your board yet?
At the same time,
Why don't
I'm
you call my wife and invite her to join your board?
No doubt, I would like you to sit on the board. But at the same time, I'm saying this. If the system can make money off of us, figure out how to make money off the system until you control or own the system. That's it. I can buy stocks in a company and not buy their products.
Nobody's challenging that.
We're not, but I'm saying
take
just
it
think
a
about
step further.
I'm taking it a step further. How about we take our dollars and sell out the stuff in the neighborhoods and stuff and not sell out chicken sandwiches?
I don't have a problem
Take
with that.
that
I don't
sa-
buy them chicken sandwiches anyway.
Right. I mean, I'm using that as an example. I'm not saying everybody should stop eating chicken sandwiches either. I'm just saying we should take that same buying power and do more with it. If we took the buying power we had and focused it on predominantly businesses of color, do you know how people talk about, oh, we need to build back Black Wall Street and Greenwood and Tulsa and all that? You can do it now. You're just not doing it. Because what it takes to do that is sacrifice. And sacrifice is hard.
That's not sacrifice. It's choices. That's not sacrifice.
Choices. I'll take that even better. It's not even sacrifice. Because I can choose not to buy a burger from McDonald's and I can go 3 doors down and buy the
Go to mom and pops.
and go to mom and pop's. And then if mom and pop doesn't do something that's well, instead of me just cursing mom and pop or saying that's why you can't buy a burger from,
Curse you out first.
well, you can't buy a burger from this black business, or going online and leaving a bad review. How about I go to the manager or the owner when I'm in there? Because if it's a small business, more than likely the owner is a stone's throw away from you anyway while you're there, and say, hey, listen, I was here last week. This was good, this was good, this was good. But I noticed this. Just wanted to give you a heads up. And then they're like, cool. And then you come back the next time and they improved the information you gave them. And then if they don't, then you can be like, well, you listen, I tried. Maybe I just don't go back. Or now I write the review. But I gave them the opportunity. If you don't say anything, how does somebody know it's broke? Like they don't know.
So, in closing, this is what we stress to you. Watch what's going on in the film industry, the show business, and see how they've placed a premium on diversity, inclusion, and equity in terms of representation in front of and behind the camera, because what we see, our representation is so important. Make sure that where you spend your dollars, you see representation that emulates you, that mirrors who you are and the things and the things you believe in, the value system that you have. Support businesses run by people who look like you. Support businesses in your neighborhood. And if you find something that's out of sorts that could be improved, there's a way to help the management, the ownership of that business make improvements by giving them positive feedback in a constructive way, as opposed to tearing them down just because they are Black owned, Latin owned, whatever. But representation matters. How you shop matters. How you choose to spend your dollars matter. And overall, we just need more businesses owned by Latinx and Black people so that we can provide the services that we need in our own neighborhoods, and so that we don't have to be overcome by first. Like Kamala Harris said, her mother always told her, if you're the first, you better not be the last. May not be as eloquent as her mother said it, but at this point, we all need to figure out how we pull ourselves up and pull somebody else up with us so that we can create, innovate, and take our people to the next level, so we won't be left being the first forever. Anything you want to add?
Just make it the norm. That's all. That's all I want to see. Make it the norm. I don't want to hear this person was the first person of color of this anymore. It should be the norm. We should be doing everything, and we should be involved in everything that's legal and good. We should be doing all of that. So it's like I don't want to hear somebody telling. I heard somebody say this at one of my board meetings years ago. Barack Obama is president now. I can truly look my son in the face and tell him, you can be anything you want to be in life. I was like, what the hell? So you're telling me, based on that statement, you were lying? You felt like you were lying to your son the whole time, telling him you could be who you want to be or you could do anything, until Barack Obama became the first president of color? So, what does that mean to me? You could sit here and tell me, and this is an African-American man telling me this. You're telling your son he could be anything he wants to be, and you didn't believe what you were telling your son the whole time you were telling him until Barack Obama became president. You grinning. What you grinning like that for?
Because you always say this.
But it's true.
It's true, but again, what does that mean for the people in Commerce and Children?
Make it a norm. Just make it. Get involved in everything. Do everything. Make it a norm. There should be no more firsts, because we should look around and see all people who look like us, who are like us, who talk like us, who walk like us, who dance like us, who do all kind of stuff like us in everything. In everything. It shouldn't be this, we're only here, we're only there, or we need to break into that. Why do we need to break into anything? Or we need to get inclusion. Like, why are we asking to be put in something that doesn't want us there? Think about that. What's this whole talk that was going on before? A seat at the table?
Well, it's like cranes in the sky.
Right? And I know we're supposed to be wrapping it up, and I'm done. But the thing is like, getting a seat at the table? Listen, a seat at the table? I want to own the table, the chairs, the room the table and the chairs in, and the damn house. That's what we should own it. I don't need to have a seat at the table if I own it, because the people sitting at the table paying me rent. Figure that one out. And on that note,
subscribe.
Thanks for coming.
We hope to see you again in Commerce and Chill Land. I'm Jessica Johnson Cope.
I'm Waleed.
Catch us soon.
Own the building.
C is for contradiction.
Make the people at the table pay you rent. Lease it to them.
And we're out.
Good night.